Alright, so this is going to be a quick breakdown of my current Void Battery Stormbrand character. I am 91 on an Assassin, and I have been using Stormbrand basically since level 12, and have used Twin Void Batteries to really scale up the damage quite considerably. This is not a cheap build by any means, but if you're looking to use some of your currency that you have kicking around, and also use the new skills, the brand skills, it's definitely a good choice. So I'm going to go over the links and gear, and then at the end of the video there's a Uber Elder Kill, so if you're interested in DPS and how much it looks, that'll be there. Stormbrand is a little orb you put on the ground like so. You can put them pretty far away, and when an enemy gets near it, it will attach to that enemy. I think my range is probably like around here, so there to there, that's about the range of attachment. And I can press R to recall all of them to my body. They last about 12 seconds on the ground currently, and they last 6 seconds attached to an enemy. So if they attach to the enemy, they do 6 seconds of damage on the enemy. If they don't kill it in that time, they disappear. If they kill it, they drop on the ground, and you start ticking down that timer for how long they've been on the ground. It's kind of weird in the beginning to get used to the playstyle of it, but once you play with them a little bit, get used to putting them down and just leaving them to do their own thing, it's super defensive, it's super safe, because you can have them killing a room for you rather than you having to walk in the room and get, you know, porcupined or whatever. These things can go off on their own. I've sometimes walked behind like 3 screens and found just dead corpses because one decided to go on a rampage into another room. They're really, really good for that, and definitely a lot of fun to play with once you get used to it. Mine is currently linked to Conk Effect, Power Charge on Crit, Lightning Pen, Control Destruction, and Hypothermia. Now, Hypothermia is a link only if you have a piece of cold damage on your gear. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at maybe something else. Faster casting would be one thing you could swap that in for, but I'm using Hypothermia because I do some cold damage. Everything is chilled, and this Hypothermia multiplies the damage I do with all my skills on chilled targets. For auras, I'm using Wrath, which is just linked to Enlighten, just because I'm leveling it. It doesn't need to be, but Wrath and Aspect of the Spider. Now, you don't have to use Aspect of the Spider. You could use Herald of Thunder, or you could use, if you have a Twin Curse Amulet, you could use something like Blasphemy Temp Chains or Frostbite. Not Frostbite, whatever the lightning one is called. I blank out on it. But for me, I don't have it because I'm using a Curse on Hit Warlord's Mark. That is incredibly powerful for brands because the brand actually attaches to the enemy and keeps the enemy cursed even if it's off screen. So unlike, let's say, a Blasphemy setup where you have to be near the enemy for it to affect, with Warlord's Mark you don't have to be near them. You can just ignore it and go on there, do your own thing. Then, because I'm using a Warlord's Mark on hit ring, I of course have a Mark of the Shaper, but I'll go a little bit over my gear a little bit later on. That's just something that is a nice utilization of that, rather than, you know, if you were to use Blasphemy, you don't really need an Elder Ring, so it's debatable whether you'd want to go Mark of the Shaper on that. Other than that, though, I'm using, these are my normal boots. I had these swapped in so I could show the power charges for 81% crit chance there. Normal boots, nothing fancy on these. Lightning damage if you haven't killed recently, it's okay for things like the Shaper fight. But that is just increased duration, immortal call, cast on damage taken, and then a vortex for a little bit of slow around me whenever I take some damage. Things around me get chilled because it's a critting vortex. It, you know, chills them in a little bit there. For Flame Dash is just Arcane Surge with faster casting. I do have an Empower connected to it just so I can get the cost a little bit higher, and that way I can have a little bit higher level of Flame Dash because this now costs 44 mana rather than the normal, which would be 36 if you keep it a little bit lower level. So that's what I have linked there. For Summon Flame Lightning Golem, I don't know if it's necessary to have Lightning Golem. You could have probably any golem or just ignore the golem completely. It does help with the damage just a little bit, but you can drop this. The big thing is brand recall does need to be attached to an empower. Some level of empower. I tried to get this to 4, it didn't work out, it's just a 3 for now. But the reason is that if you don't have the brand recall attached to an empower, this also needs to be a level 7 brand recall. It has a cooldown time of 2 seconds. When you attach it to an empower, it actually goes down to 1.76, and that's really big if you're mapping quickly. You want this to be down on cooldown all the time, so you don't have to resummon these constantly because they're quite heavy on mana. It's 67 mana versus Brand Recall, which is 27, and you can just keep recalling them to yourself moving through the map, and that's much, much better for you in terms of doing everything. And it also increases their attachment duration and detached duration as well when you Brand Recall. So if you have it low enough, you can basically keep it up all the time, but you'd have to push this even higher. So this would have to be a 7, this would have to be a 4, and then you'd have to have cooldown reduction on both your boots and gloves to be able to really go beyond where you could actually maybe push it to an infinite range. But that's not all that important, but it will help with longer fights like Shaper. Other than that though, I have increased duration, multi-totem, decoy totem, and a righteous fire. Val Righteous Fire is huge for DPS, because you can have the brands attach and then pop Val Righteous Fire. You don't have to pop it preemptively. So whenever you see them attached to, let's say, a syndicate member or a boss, you just pop Val Righteous Fire. The brand itself takes a massive amount of DPS boost, and you basically get free DPS from that while you can be safe around the corner. No problem at all. So Val Righteous Fire is huge. Increased duration really helps with that. Decoy Totem is kind of weird because it has to be linked to multi-totem support in this build. The reason is that when you go Runebinder, you lose one maximum number of totems, so you basically go down to 0. You can't have any totems, but because you have it linked to multi-totem, which gives you +2 to maximum totems, you can then summon an additional totem, which basically lets you summon one totem. So that's why I can actually summon this totem. It's really helpful in some encounters like Minotaur and some of the Guardian encounters, because brand skills kind of do their own thing and you're running around like a headless chicken, and there's nothing else for them to target in those fights besides you, because it's not a totem. They can't target a totem. They can't target the brand, I mean. The decoy totem really helps with a way to kind of get the heat off of you while your brand does damage. So not necessary, but if you're getting hit a lot and kind of want to help yourself not be the main target, decoy totem comes in super handy for that. As far as gear goes, helmet is whatever as long as you have the Stormbrand penetration enchant from Uberlab on it. It's huge damage plus to have that. Penetration is kind of key because you are an assassin. You are scaling mostly just crit and spell crit and normal spell damage through the void batteries, and you're scaling some area damage. So if you want to go the area route for something like Armageddon brand, then you definitely need pen elsewhere. So I have 12 pen on my helmet, and I have the Watcher's Eye for another 14 penetration because I'm using Wrath, and then I've balanced my Wise Oak for another 15 penetration. So penetration is huge when you're talking about doing DPS on bosses. So if you do not have that, definitely get all these things. It's going to take a while to build up the currency to scale it all the way, but I'll show you why that's really important when I kind of pull up Path and Building and see where the DPS is right now. So yeah, Aspect of the Spider is just my defensive thing, and it does help with damage as well. Those webs do increase the multiplier, so that's, you can or cannot go this route. It's whatever, depends on how expensive whatever you need for this is. Everything else on the gear is pretty bog standard for belt. This could be cooldown, could be Stygian Vice. I'm just using a plain belt because I needed some resistances. This has just Warlord's Mark on hit and the fire and the cold. The reason I'm using fire and cold is because I was messing around with the new Cinder Swallow. That's, you have to ignite things during the flask effect for 10% increased damage. I don't think that shows up in Path of Building yet, but if you have a little bit of fire, a little bit of cold on your ring or wherever that's added to your spells, then you can chill and you can ignite, and that allows you to use Hyperthermia and the Cinder Swallow, which is really cool. So look into that. Mark of the Shaper, of course, huge spell damage bonus, a little bit of lightning damage to spells, which is really good, and then a little bit of elemental damage from the prefix, as well as the 6% life. Because you are an assassin, you definitely are starved for life on this tree, so all my jewels, which this jewel socket I still have to get, but this jewel socket, 7% max life, crit multi lightning damage. This one over here, 7% life, crit multi lightning damage. So you're really going to be looking for jewels that are kind of expensive, kind of in the 1 exalt range, because you need that maximum life, otherwise you just cannot survive. My chest, you could go Lore Weave, you lose about 100k DPS per brand, but for me this is a chest I rolled like day 1 of the ladder, so I've kind of just stuck with it. +1 active skill gems is really, really powerful because brand level matters hugely when you are doing DPS, and then spells have plus 1.5 crit chance, which basically means I have a increased crit strikes gem, one of these, just in this link at all times and on all my spells. But for me, it's really important to have that base crit because it does a huge difference to it, and it actually allows me to crit so often using Diamond Flask that if I swipe out Control Destruction for increased crit, I go to 95% crit chance, and I can run Reflect maps because of the you don't take crit damage or you don't take reflected damage from critical strikes gems. So if you have enough crit, you can really scale this up, and that's the reason I'm using this chest rather than a lore weave. If I needed more defense, if I needed more survivability, I'd switch this out for a lore weave, and I'd be much better off with it. Boots, nothing fancy here. The enchant doesn't matter. It helps if you can get something like this. If you can't, don't worry about it. Just movement speed, resistances, life, things you always need. My boots can have a lot more life, and so could my helmet, and that would help me push my health way up. You know, right now it's the 5-3 that I have right here. I could push it to 5-5, 5-6, maybe 6k if I were to change out some of these pieces. Amulet wise, because I've taken the resistances on all the rest of my gear, this is spell damage, crit multi. It used to be crit chance, but I needed to get lightning resistance on there so I could get the Wise Oak balanced, which is huge. I have it double balanced currently. I have, well, I did have it. So I have my fire and my lightning as my highest and cold as lowest. I just want to get this triple balance so I can get the defensive side of Wise Oak, not just the offensive side. But anything with damage on it will work fine. Crit multi, once again, one of those really important things for this build. Of course, weapon-wise, we're using Void batteries. They're really expensive right now. I think they're like 4 Exalt, so not easy to get into, but they're super powerful once you get 9 power charges going. If you were to get crazy and maybe get some power charge on your boots or something with a corrupted enchant or something, that would be insane. You could get the 10 power charges. You'd basically be looking at always critting, huge multiplier, huge damage bonus. Would be really cool. Other than that, I think gear-wise, it's pretty self-explanatory. Got some flask going. Diamond is needed. Wise Oak, needed. Quicksilver, it's nice because Flame Dash does have its cooldown thing. Onslaught, I'd recommend over Cinder Swallow. I'm using Cinder Swallow just for now, for testing it out, because I figured it's new, wanted to test it out. But you could use a normal Onslaught flask, probably be up a little bit more often than Cinder Swallow on fights like Uber Elder. Other than that, there's not too much to this build. It is just you put brands down and you press R, you kill stuff, they die really quickly. Passive tree wise, it's a normal assassin. You get these, opportunist, go for deadly infusion first, and then whichever one of these you feel like getting, it doesn't matter. Pass through here. I would recommend doing the travel up to Runebinder first. So it takes a lot to go through all of this, but if you're leveling, definitely get Runebinder first. It really helps in the beginning game to be able to put 2 brands on an enemy, Katava, things like that. It really helps for damage, and then you kind of flash out your life pool wherever you need it, and then start working on the power charges once you actually have your ascendancies and you're actually using Void batteries, because before that, you don't need it. You really don't need the damage from these. It's just a hassle to keep up before you have things like Deadly Infusion, your Void battery is actually going. So skip those for then, and then just kind of flush it out, where try to get as much life as you can early on so you're not dying too much. You could go for jewel sockets if you have the money to put jewels in them, but if you don't have the money, I'd ignore them for now. Jewels like this, they're about an Exalt a piece, so it's really not the first thing you need to invest in, because you can pick up a lot of the other nodes first and get a lot more power from that. If you need a little bit dex, depending on what you need, you could always grab these 2 nodes. I needed some of it for my armor until I got it on my gloves, so make changes as you need them. But DPS wise, if we go and look at path building right now, this is not like, there's nothing crazy going on here, right? I don't have Valrighteous Fire on. That adds like another 300k to the damage. Things I have ticked, power charge is attached to the enemy. This is huge. If it's not attached, it's not doing as much damage, but make sure you get that checked in there. I do have them ignited and chilled. Ignite doesn't do anything because Cinder Swallow isn't counted correctly in the thing here. See, I have this clicked, but it's only doing the onslaught portion of it, and without anything else, that's basically it, right? We're on Shaper, chilled, ignited. power charges. We don't have crit chances lucky right now. It's just attached to it, and no spider stacks. So if we go to the maximum, which is, you know, we're saying 3 spider stacks, we're getting all our flask up. We're already at 846,000, and this is per brand. This is not your total damage, this is per brand. So if you have 2 brands attached, you're doing a good 1.6 million already right there. Valrighteous Fire on top of that, you're really pushing it. You know, that's not going to be up for the most part. But the big thing, like I was saying, is the level of the brand matters a lot. So right now we're at 846k. If I put it up 1 level, we instantly jump up to 928. So brand level is huge. If you can get a 21 Storm brand, definitely get it. It's going to help you immensely to get that. And of course, anything else 21 as well. You know, it all buffs up, but not nearly as much as the Storm brand. So definitely get Storm brand leveled up. Other than that, though, the gear is pretty simple, straightforward once you start piecing it all together. The tree is nothing crazy. You know, these are the last 2 points I'm going to get. That's going to put me at 92. Actually, that can't put me at 92. I got to figure out where I'm missing a point. But anyway, these are the last 2 things I'm going to get. And then, you know, toss in another one of these same kind of things. I'm at 5,500 HP. That's plenty of HP for doing stuff like Elder. Elder, I can do deathlessly pretty easily if I don't mess up. The clip I have right now, I do die in one time. I run by Shaper and he smacks me in the back of the head because I only got 3.5k life. I forgot the pot. You know, stuff like that's going to get you killed. But for the most part, the defense is really in the fact that you can move. You can keep constantly moving, ducking and diving. Since the brands are going to be doing their own thing, you just put them down, touch the enemy, and then you can just dodge and do whatever you need to do. And these things keep doing damage for you. You don't have to focus on them. They last a good amount of time, and then whenever you have an opening, you summon a couple more, you jump on top of the enemy, press R, and then you just move around again. So you can really take the time to learn mechanics, learn the fights, and just know that you're doing damage in the background, which is super, super helpful. So anyway, quick Elder kill here at the end. Like I said, I do die once in it, but you can do it deathlessly pretty easily. And yeah, I really hope you enjoy the build. If you try it out, it's super, super fun. It's super, super powerful. It's probably one of the most powerful builds I've played so far this league, just because you have so much mobility, so much damage, and other than the fact that it's pretty costly to do, if you don't want to do something this costly, I definitely recommend looking for the Elemental Overload versions of this. Mathel House's Armageddon brand build. You know, those are really good as well. They just don't get to these ridiculous levels of DPS. Once I get all my gear set and everything, I should be looking at about 1 million per brand. So that's 2 million Shaper DPS with me not having to actually focus on the fight too much, which is really, really good. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this quick video. And yeah, if you need any questions or things, leave them in the comments or check it out on stream, you know, twitch.tv/DireGray. I'll link that as well as the paste bin for this character. Thanks so much for watching.
Putrefy, rot, spoil, and fester.
Exile, do something!
pocket.